All right, how you doing?
I'm all right. Where are you?
I'm in San Carlos, California, which is just a little south of San Francisco.
Nice to hear home.
I am at home, very
Eh?
temporarily.
Temporarily. I mean, you've been what, a working musician around the
Say,
West Coast for 20 years or so. And you played with members of the Grateful Dead and Peter Rowan, and you played up at Lehman Helms Barn. I mean, but you're now starting a solo career. I mean, what's made
yeah,
you do that? I thought you'd learned enough by now. I think, no, I'll let somebody pay me.
it's a funny thing, I had I had music that I had been working on for a long time, and the band that I was in, um, we had a great run, and they're still together and they're still friends of mine, but we were they had two lead singers and two songwriters, so that I wasn't, I didn't have a spot to write, and I wasn't writing all that much, and so I the run was very fun. I got to do a lot of really cool things, and I still get to do a lot of really cool things. There's no shortage of it. But we came. I grew a little disgruntled, and we kind of came to a decision to part ways, and then that was like right before the pandemic hit, and so everybody's opinion of things is different now. Everyone's uh, doing different things, and for better or for worse. I mean, there's just a lot of music out there right now because people have had time to be creative, and I had been working on what I call my previous record, and I put that out in May of 2020, so no one heard it. Everyone was at home, and then I started to ask questions. Well, what would I if I really wanted to make a go at this? What would I do? And that's what led to led to the questions that got asked and answered for the making of this one. So it's been an interesting 4.5 years.
I mean, you've got Steve Berlin in from Los Lobos to produce. I mean, how did that come about? And what did he bring?
Man, Steve's so cool. Um, the my manager and Steve have known each other a very long time, but never worked with each other on a project. And so I guess they were trying to find something to do, and my manager said, hey Steve, would you be interested in taking a listen to this kid's demos? And kid, I'm at the time I think I was 32, 31, something like that,
If only.
and, and a kid to them. And so Steve listened to the demos and then agreed to have a meeting with me, and we met, and it was the first producer I met with. He was the first guy we met with to talk about the record, and I guess what I've been told is that we both got off the phone call and sort of mutually expressed to my manager Jack that you know we were interested in doing the record together. So we stopped searching immediately and started working on figuring out how to do it, and it was very very fun. It was very very hard, but it was really fun.
I mean, you recorded in Austin. I mean, there's plenty of studios around your neck of the woods anyway, isn't there? Why go all the way to Texas to record it?
Right. Steve had just made a record down there. He'd made a few records in a row, I think, in Texas, and um, the the Bay Area is wonderful, but we're very isolated. The way geographically the United States is, the West is very spread out, and including Texas for that matter. But there's more. Uh, I don't know. There's a different musical culture once you get east of the Rockies. California has its thing, and I really love it, and I really love the way we make music and all the bands out here. But like I said, we're very isolated. So the idea was from Steve and from management to kind of get me out of my zone and get me in not just a different place musically, but also physically. And so going to Austin um, meant that we would work with musicians who had totally different opinions about music and totally different, not necessarily different influences, but different preferences on how they wanted to go about recording. and making music, and it was wonderful. I mean, we the first week or so we would go out at night, after recording all day and go listen to music, and I was astonished. Uh, it was just, there was so much of the audience for every show was musicians going to see musicians play, and it was very cool. I mean, and they were genuine fans too, supportive of everyone else, and it's just a little different out here. Everyone's working really hard, and so we don't go out as much at night. But the weather is so nice in Texas in springtime at night. Everyone's out and about. It was really very cool. Austin was a great choice, and that was all Steve.
I mean, you got a lot of guest musicians on there. I mean, how was all that managed? I mean, obviously from your point of view, Alex, it sounded like it was a bit of a learning curve as well. Out of your comfort zone, it was new.
Yeah, yes, definitely.
I mean, how did it all sort of work? How did it come together?
I mean, I really have to give the credit to Steve. He first just down to obviously, like I said, he picked the studio, and the studio had a couple of engineers that worked there, but there was one that he had just worked with. He really wanted to work with again. And then the next step was, the session musicians, and he had done projects with them, but not those ones together. And so he asked if they would want to work on the record, and I sort of took on the role of being the session keyboardist. Um, and Steve and I had not a debate, but a conversation about that, and I said, "Let me try it. Let me try and see if I can pull it off." And he was okay with me playing the piano and the organ and all that. So that's me on there. But then we started to talk about who to bring in for little special features, and starting with the horn section, there were some local Austin players and a not necessarily well known but very well liked horn arranger and trombone player. His name goes by Mark Speedy Gonzalez, and he great horn arrangements. And then after that, they said, "Well, who can we bring in for fiddle?" "Oh, well, this woman Carrie Rodriguez, she also sings." And so, "Oh, great, perfect." So we brought her in, and she plays fiddle on the one track and sings harmony on it, and then she sings all the harmony on Blue. And Steve, being in the Tex-Mex world and the Norteño world and the blues world and everything, he knew. Um, we had this sort of Tex-Mex Zydeco rockabilly track that Carrie was going to play some fiddle on, and we decided we wanted an accordion solo. And so he knew this guy, I think it was from La Super 7, named Josh Baca, who's Flaco Jimenez's protege. And he shreds like Flaco. I mean, he plays the accordion. It's like flies. It's a button accordion, which is just, as a piano player, I look at the thing, I go, that's not a keyboard instrument,
Yeah.
And he just shredded. I mean, we had him do like 20 plus takes just because we were amused. And I remember specifically having a raging headache after the session with him because we were smiling and grinning and laughing and just cackling in the control room, and he'd do these crazy solos, and we said, "Do another one, do another one, do another one." So, and he said, "Go crazy, go crazy." He goes, "I am going crazy." So, "No, crazier, go crazy." We were just dying, and he was just so good. And so Josh Baca, that was a real fun day.
I mean, your songs. I mean, how did that work? I mean, how firm were they when you brought them into the studio, and how much was sort of developed
my
live sort of thing?
my impression of how firm they were was different than how firm they actually were. you know, um, this is part of the learning curve, and I really loved this. This was just an amazing experience. Um, so as I mentioned, I showed the demos to my manager, and he sent them to Steve. Steve listened to them. Steve actually came to my house and listened to. I played them. I had a little outbuilding, and we got together in there, and I just picked up my guitar and played. He had picked 12 songs, and I played them, and then he asked if I had other fragments, and I sent the fragments over. And so I think we picked 8 or so of those 12, and then I took some of the fragments and finished writing a couple songs. And uh, and my impression was that was what was the record was going to be those songs that we chose. And we got there and we started working on the basics, and they were turning out really great. I mean, just the first week was like awe-inspiring. I mean, I'd worked in studios before and with studio musicians before, but this was a different level, and I was really stoked. And it was working really well. All those things had come together at once. And uh, so we sat down the night before I was going to fly back to San Francisco. We were going to have like 4 or 5 days off, and Steve, we pulled up a Google Doc that I had all the lyrics typed up on, and he goes, "Okay, we got to talk about the lyrics." And he starts to take the songs that we'd already work on and say, "Okay, work on these, maybe tweak this, tweak that," and then we had songs slated for the following week, and he said, specifically the one I always remember is with Queen Kerosene, the title track. It wasn't the title track yet; it wasn't done yet, and I had this version of it, and it was like a protest song, and I'm not much of a folky protest writer. And Steve says, uh, "Keep the title, keep the chorus, and cut everything else." And so I was flabbergasted. I was like, "I thought you liked the song. You said you wanted to do the song." And so I was upset, but I mean, I was mad, but not like, I mean, I wasn't mad at him. I was just like, "Oh God, like, what do I have to do?" And I called my manager. I said, "I don't know if I can do this." He said, "No, no, hang in there. And so I went back to my room. We were staying in this house next door, and I went back to the room, and I had my guitar in the room, and I just kind of was like, "I'll show him. I'll write him a song. And I just got to working on it, and that night that became what became Queen Kerosene, which then I showed it to him in the morning on the way to the airport, and it wasn't even a good job. It was more like, yeah, keep working on that. That's better, you know. And so I worked on that over the course of the week. I worked on it when we got back, but I had a much better version of the song when we came back, 5 days later, the following week in Austin, and uh, that kind of set the tone. So then I really got to work on the other songs and tweaking the other lyrics, and there were some major transformations. Queen Kerosene being the biggest one. What's Become of Me, the song on there, that went through about 4 different versions before we found one we liked. Um, but when we started tracking Queen Kerosene the following week, I knew immediately that was going to be the title track because it sounded different than everything else, in a way that was enjoyable. We had these kind of R&B tracks and these folkier tracks, and it just set the tone. So yeah, they were not firm. They needed they I thought they were firmly done, and we tweaked the heck out of them, and I loved it. I'll do that every time from now on. I will. There's no such thing as a finished product until the vinyl's pressed. So
I mean, you mentioned there, Alex. I mean, the album's a bit like a buffet or a smorgasbord of sort of American music. There, rock and roll, R&B, folk, whatever.
right.
Was that is that you? Was that deliberate, or how did you sort of
Um,
go about the
I'll own
mix?
that part. I'll own that part. I mean, as a musician, so with the band I was with, they were called Midnight North. They are called Midnight North, and I traveled the country for 6 years with them, and I met a lot of people and heard a lot of music, and this moniker of Americana artist gets thrown around a lot, and there's a lot of Americana artists that kind of have a homogenized sound, and I envy them because I struggle to replicate something, and I think that's because I have such love of the American musical art form. I grew up playing and listening to jazz. When I started playing with Midnight North, there was this restaurant in Marin County, California, just north of San Francisco, that was owned by Phil Lesh, and we had this community. It was called Terrapin Crossroads, and we had this community of musicians, and there was not really any rules or guidelines. We would just sort of play shows, pick up band style shows, and say, "I've got these songs, oh, I've got these songs," and then we passed the tune around the stage, and it was wildly eclectic. We were playing everything from Wilco to some funk charts, pop charts, country music, honky tonk music, Crosby, Stills and Nash, the band. That was a major one. The band. We played a lot of that because Phil had a great admiration for Levon Helm, which, as you mentioned, when we eventually played at the barn with that band, we played there a few times, and one of the times was a whole big night with Phil played too, and it was amazing, just amazing. And there's a vibe about that. but I started to get into, I was into the Grateful Dead and I was into the band and Crosby, Stills and Nash, and I started to get into what they were into. What did they listen to? And that, so you take a step back and listen to their influences, and oh, they like honky tonk, they like Appalachian music, they like jazz, they like folk, and then where does that go? Where does that go? Where does that go? And jazz and rock combined, and you've got R&B with blues, and you've got this and all these, and it's all these very American art forms. And of course, um, we traded rock and roll across the pond as far as who was furthering the genre over the years. Um, but the Americana stuff, that that is influenced by what the American cultural art form is, and I'm in love with it in a way that I'm proud of it. I'm more proud of it than I am of some other aspects of being American. Um, but
We haven't got time to talk about that, have we,
no, we
Alex?
don't. But musically, I think that there's an amazing wealth in such a short window of time. In such a short window of time, there's been so much. You think about how long, the total continental United States has been united in a way that the information can travel, and that I mean, in the last 150, 120 years, it just is just flown, and the development of music has just been wild, but so rapid that it's worth revisiting things constantly. And so that's where I find myself, where I go, well, wait a minute, is this thing that happened in 1971 dead? No, people still like it. People like this, people like that, and just listening to all of that and combining, uh, that's me, and I own that because I love it all. Well, I can't say all of it, but I love a lot of it.
I mean, you got yourself a proper producer. You've obviously, yeah, spent time in the studio. Uh, you had Nielsen over to do the video for Queen Kerosene. I mean,
Oh, so
what's
cool.
it like being effectively a new emerging solo artist in 2024? How hard is it going to be? You know.
I don't know. I mean, it's just hard to be. I don't even think it's hard if you're not emerging. I think it's hard if you're established right now. Um, I I don't am I emerging? I don't know. I'm making a go of it. Um, I don't want to do anything else, and there has been music that has moved me and and changed me and shaped me to the point that I feel compelled, if I have something to say, to try to say it, just to see if someone else is interested in it too. And maybe, I mean, I majored in music education, so maybe this is the teacher in me, but I feel it's important if you can reach somebody and help them with whatever they're feeling or dealing with, that's important. And there are songs that have changed me. I mean, there's theater that has changed me. There's art that has changed me, geography that is geological features that have changed me, and just things like that. And in the realm of art, if you are an artist, I feel that you are, if you're an artist, you're called to make art, and that's part of it. And that art, you can do it for you can do it for others, and it's a little of both for me, but I feel that's what keeps me going, because it's certainly terrifying, the idea of being a new artist in the vast scheme of being a musical artist today, where there's just a near infinite amount of music being out there, and I know that I want to say something because someone wanted to say something to me, whether they knew it or not. It reached me, and so I would like to try to do the same, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, nobody knows the future. I
No.
mean, you've had a career to date. Yeah. I mean, have you got a favorite memory of that? You
Of
work with some interesting people. So, in terms of what you've done today, is there something there that you thought, wow, yeah, this ain't bad? Yeah.
Well, I mean, being on stage with Phil Lesh, Bob Weir, and Peter Rowan, it's like, on a psychological level. I have to tell you though, on a psychological level, it's like, oh my gosh, this is very cool. But you don't have time for that. You're up there playing, and I was playing the organ, and Peter called a tune he called Midnight Moonlight, but it was a reggae. And I was like, well, I didn't expect that from Peter today. And so I had to, mentally wrap my head around playing this song that I know as a bluegrass song as a reggae on the organ. You know, so you don't really have time to sit there and be in awe of the situation. It's just like, oh yeah, I did that. Um, I mean, that's one of the top ones. The first time I played with Phil was up there too. But when I was 18, uh, I went on tour with a choir down to Australia, and we did this World Youth Day thing. And I don't know about all the religious parts of it, but I was certainly into the being with the choir. And we performed in the Sydney Opera House the day we got off the plane to a full house of international tourists. I thought that was pretty cool. And then a few days later, we performed at this race course in Sydney for 425,000 people. And I looked out and I said, okay, that's Woodstock. you know? And I'm looking out at this massive race course, this crowd, and going, well, I'll probably never do this again. You know, take it in, look at it now. And that was pretty special. And the other really special one, to be honest, is we just had my album release show a few weeks ago, and we worked really hard. The band worked hard, my team worked hard, and it was among the few instances where you're the band leader, but you get to have fun. Usually, if you're in charge of something, you're too busy managing it that you don't get to enjoy it. But my band was wonderful. The audience was wonderful. We had about 200 people there, and it sounded good on stage. And we played for about 2 hours. And I mean, I have video footage of it. I was just smiling the whole time, and I had a great time. And that was really gratifying for me because it's rare, like I said, that if you're in charge or the leader, that you get to actually have fun at the ball. And so that was pretty cool. And I think what was the coolest part about it was there were a lot of people there that believed in me. And you don't always believe in yourself as an artist. You have many, many days, more days than you would care to admit, that you don't necessarily know if you've got it. And seeing all those people who felt like this was worthwhile to them was very meaningful. So that's up there.
Great. Is it too early to think about coming to the UK, or?
Not at all. I got my passport's in arm's reach over here, man. I'm ready to go. No, it's the funny thing about the streaming era, and I have mixed feelings about what streaming has done to music. But the two coolest parts are the accessibility, and then the fact that I can look and see where people are listening. And quite frankly, the UK is one of the strongest markets for where people listen to not just my music, but my genre. And so I can look and see, oh, here are my numbers in the UK. Oh wow, here's the acts like me have these big numbers and everything. And so no, not at all. I would love to come because I feel that first of all, it's been way too long. It's been over a decade since I've been, and second of all, it's I I'm fond of the people. I'm fond of the land and the culture, and they seem to like the kind of music I play, so I would gladly come.
Well, that can be a plan for the future, then, can't it?
It would be wonderful. I can't wait.
It's Americana UK, Alex. We like to ask people, what are you listening to now? So, 3 albums, tracks, or artists, can be old, new, any genre. Just what
Yeah.
you're enjoying that you think other people, might
Well,
enjoy.
let's see. So most recently, let's look at what I've got up here. Most recently, I was listening to revisiting, in fact, Freddie King's album Getting Ready World. It's pretty cool. There's 2 drummers on half the tracks, and it's a neat thing. But Freddie King, you can't beat him. Also, recently I was listening to some salsa music, specifically a fellow by the name of Willie Colon, and he's a trombone player and a band leader. And I thought that was wonderful. And then one of my favorite records that I've listened to a few times in the last couple of years by Tanya Tucker. And I just listened to that the other day. It had been a while. It was produced by Brandy Carlisle. And I had the pleasure of seeing Tanya on my last trip to Nashville, or two, excuse me, 2 trips ago to Nashville. She had a show at the Ryman, and Brandy came out and sat in, and it was really cool to see country legend kind of coming back and just really sounding wonderful
Yeah,
at the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville. That was very cool. So
but
those are
that's it.
my
Iconic.
definitely, definitely.
Is there anything you want to say to the UK audience?
Oh man. Well, thus far, thank you for listening, and truly, I can't wait to come visit because I I need to. I love it there, and I'm just the enthusiasm for music, around the world cannot be understated, and it's a joy to it's a joy, like I said, to look and see. Oh man, there are people in the UK listening to my music, and that's very very cool. And I would love. I can't wait to come visit. Is what I would love to say. Don't